So this webinar has come about through a conversation with one of our operator members who got in touch and asked about if we had any advice for building good relationships with brokers and that would make it work mutually. So I thought this was a good webinar topic. And we are joined by three people from companies which are broker members of the Flexible Space Association. And I'm going to get them to introduce themselves first. So starting with Bob, please.
Hi there, I'm Bob Tor from Office Freedom. Been in the sector for 20 odd years now, both sides of the field, working as a serviced office operator and now as a broker.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Dubitsky. I'm Director of Business Development at FlexSA Offices. I haven't been in the market quite as long as Bob, but I've been with FlexSA for the last 16 years, and I've had the privilege of sitting in one seat for all that time. So that's me.
Thank you. And Sophie?
Hi, I'm Sophie Turnbull. I'm Director of Operator Relations at the Instant Group, and I've been around for 12 years, so still not long enough than the other two, but around for quite a long time, working on both the sales side and now looking after all our global operator partnerships.
Okay, thank you. So we encourage people when they were signing up to submit questions for this webinar, and we've tried to incorporate as many as possible. There is the chat function on the screen if there's something that you particularly want to ask and think isn't being, and I'll try and put those up as we go along. So to start with, and this Bob, I'm sure that everyone watching will have a broad understanding of your role, but could you give us an insight into a typical day in the life of a broker?
Sure, absolutely. So a typical day for me starts about 8 a.m. where I'll be checking emails from the previous night just to make sure I've responded to all of the operators, looking at all the international inquiries we've had overnight. As you all know, the internet never sleeps. So constantly making sure that we're on top of those and dealing with the time difference. Sometimes you're dealing with inquiries in India, Europe, South Africa, Dubai. So you need to make sure you can get a response, get hold of the actual operators out there in order to send availability, pricing to a particular client that's looking in a particular area. Go through the CRM, make sure my sort of recontacts, i.e. people I have to call on that specific day, have been called, and the appropriate notes are put into the system, make sure property reports are going out to all the UK clients, attend viewings with clients, make sure I chaperone them. It's just more of a tailored service we offer. And plus it means that the client builds up a bit more trust. Nothing like being face-to-face with the client and having that interaction and truly understanding what they want when they go around viewing a number of offices. Make sure I share the forecast with our CEO. Also, I sit down once or twice a week just to go through the forecast pipeline, kind of where I'm at in terms of, achieving target. And that target can be based on revenue generally, rather than just desks, especially in this current market. And also just staying on top of all sort of agents, just responding to every sort of single email I get, really. Yeah.
Okay. Sophie, is there anything you'd add to that, or is it very much the same for you?
It's very similar. I think the one thing to allude to what Bob was saying is that no day is ever the same. So you can have a plan of what you're wanting to achieve, but you have to be very reactive to leads that come through, and you have to sort of jump on top of things and respond to operators as quickly as you can, book viewings, rearrange viewings, and sometimes go back and forth when that wasn't necessarily in your plan for the day. So I think where frustrations probably lie from an operator's perspective is we're not always responding quick enough, but that is because we are constantly on the phone, constantly trying to respond, and it is a very reactive process. So I think that's the only thing I would add to the day-to-day is that it can sometimes be very manic. Other days can be a little bit quieter and you can feel more on top of yourself.
Thank you. And Michael, does that leave anything left that hasn't been covered?
Not really, but yeah, like Bob and Sophie said, it's a fantastically complex balance that we have to strike, we have to remember that everyone within a brokerage is human, and we across all of our companies, employ a fantastic bunch of people that do their utmost to, service both the provider side and the client side to the best of their ability. I think we do a great job, but clearly could always do more and do better.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll start with Michael with the next question, which has come in as one that's been fed in by an operator. How can operators improve the quality of inquiries they receive from brokers? Are there standard things you'd advise operators to do to improve the working relationship and improve leads, or other things to make them stand out?
Thanks, Jane. It's a great question, but it's actually quite a complicated one to answer because of how many variables it really includes. I thought about this, and I thought I'd touch on just 3 things to consider when talking about the answer. One is differentiation, the other one is knowing your customer, and the other one is the relationship with brokers, which I think will be a constant theme of this webinar. On the differentiation piece, we live in an extremely crowded marketplace. The sector grew at a massive rate prior to COVID, and it will continue to grow at a massive rate once we're out of the other side of it. So as an operator, I think you need to be able to very clearly communicate your USPs in a fairly concise, almost one-sentence message that a broker can understand and carry with them at all times. We can stand out in our minds for specific things that you do better than everybody else that will filter through to the customers, and we can make much better matches. On the point about knowing your customer, it's really about optimizing a small portion of leads that we send you anyway. It's about if you can know in your mind the customer that you will win 100% of the time, and you can tell that to the broker, say, this is the client I will always win because of this and this and this. We will make sure that those kind of clients are included. Obviously, we'll send you the entirety of the leads that are suitable for area and price and all that sort of stuff. So it's not about sending less leads; it's about knowing which leads are perfect for you. And the final point, really, the better you get on with agents within the brokerage, the easier that message is to put across, and it reinforces that message over time. So you'll find that your brand gets a higher profile internally, a higher percentage of agents in a brokerage understand what you're about, and will maximize our ability to help you. These things sound really basic, and actually they are, but think about it this way. If the flex space market has evolved to a place where a building is happy to take any client, and a lot of USPs are service-based, which is what the nature of serviced offices is, and every building is therefore suitable for everybody, every lead, how can we possibly match the right clients to the right buildings? So I think the more you can help us out with that equation, the better we will be as a vehicle to getting you the right lead at the right time.
Okay. Thank you. Before I go any further, I am going to say, and I predicted I might say this, Bob, if you can mute when you're not on because you're jumping over the background noise is making the screen jump around. But I was going to go next to Sophie on this question. And Sophie, have you got other things you'd add to what Michael said?
Yeah, I think just to echo that relationship basis is communication is really key, and keeping in touch with us as much as possible about changes to your centres, refurbishments, anything else that you're doing. I think one big thing that I find really helps us send the right quality leads is knowing what you're doing within the centre around community events, other things that you're doing that we could really relay back to the client that could match with that client in a really good fit to what they're looking for. And I think the other point for me, and I'm a big advocate of it, is content. So the better content you give us, the better listings and better lead generation you're going to get. So that's pricing, imagery, accuracy around all the amenities you've got. That is really key for me personally, because that means that when a client's looking, they're getting a really good idea of what they're going to get on the viewing, so that there's no difference to what they're seeing from a photograph to when they're there. So I think those, for me, on top of everything Michael said, is the key parts to better lead generation and better lead quality anyway.
Right. Thank you. Bob, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think just the more dialogue between you know, the broker and the operator, I think, you know, really counts for a lot. Just constantly, you know, as the other guys, Michael and Sophie, have said, letting us know about, you know, sort of any voids, any special amenities or anything different you're doing than maybe some of your competitors in the marketplace. And it's just keeping that rapport really, and that constant dialogue is just key really. I think the guys have really covered everything there.
Okay, so this perhaps, I think might have covered it really, but we were asked particularly whether there can be information overload, whether perhaps there's you know, too much information. Does it? And this is someone's actually put the question on: what frustrates you the most about the way operators work? Don't hold back is the question. So that perhaps fits into a little on this one. Sophie, do you want to take that first?
Yeah. So I mean, personally, no, there's never no such thing as information overload. I think what it is being valuable, accurate, and effective information. So we want to hear about special offers, we want your availability, we want to hear what you're doing, but what we don't want is to hear of it every single day via email or chasing constantly. Personally, we'd much rather you pick up the phone, and there's other ways to communicate with us and other ways to make sure that you can get your messaging across. I think the thing that frustrates me the most with working with operators is purely that communication basis, is work with us and talk to us more, and you will be able to help fill those spaces like Bob said, but also help to really push that client to make a decision quicker and speed that sales process up. So there is no such thing as information overload, but let's just be effective and creative, I think, in the way that we're sharing it.
Okay, thank you. Bob, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, just to kind of echo what Sophie said, it's all about that dialogue, picking up the phone, sort of understanding, you know, some of the challenges we have. Sometimes you do get a lot of information. You do, in my opinion, you know, the availability comes out. Sometimes some operators send it literally every other day. And sometimes you're kind of thinking, actually, I know you've got that office, you know, on the 3rd floor, and that's great, but tell us how we can promote it. And maybe just change the frequency. So availability once a week is generally enough on a Monday, tends to work quite well for the team. Just kind of understand who deals with any specific location, lead size, and yeah, just keep up the dialogue really. That's the key.
Okay, and Michael, and perhaps on this one, just someone's just asked about having exact telephone numbers to reach people directly. And what way do you think works best in terms of communication?
Well, we're always, you know, we're happy, but well, actually, first of all, it never ceases to amaze me how much information a single person can hold in their head. If you, you know, walk around a brokerage and point to a random individual and say, you know, how many desks has this building got? They'll probably tell you. It's extraordinary, really. So we do carry a huge volume of data in our minds, but it can be a bit overwhelming. You know, in terms of communication, you know, most brokerages will, you know, divide their teams into either regional or size-based bands. So it should be relatively straightforward to work out who you should be speaking to, depending on what the query is. But I think it's more about, I think we get drawn into this. The question is, well, when should we send you availability, and do you want availability or not? I think the availability is a given. I think we should be talking more about, you know, what are the challenges? What are the issues? What is it that we can actually work on resolving together in our communications with customers, and how we put your brand forward? And I think Sophie alluded to this. So I think a lot of the time the availability itself is a bit of a red herring in terms of it preoccupies everybody's mind at the micro level. But you know, let's follow that up with useful conversations about what can be done about it and what you're seeing and what we're seeing.
Right, thank you. So, I mean, this is perhaps being picked up to some extent, but what we've been asked the question of, would you advise operators to try to establish contact with one person at each broker, or just aim to work with everyone? And perhaps a question that's just come in as well that links into that is whether brokers prefer dealing with a central sales team or a local sales rep when dealing with a multi-centre operator. So that's both halves of that question. Bob, you want to?
To me, it's all about having a personable relationship, and with all operators, there's always like a go-to person, if you like, in every organization, every operator, and you know that person is, you know, a minefield of knowledge. So they'll know exactly what the USPs are of the building, what the internet costs are, the cost of the meeting rooms, where there's bike racks, showers, dog friendly, whereas some other individuals you find are might not be that knowledgeable. But it's always best to sort of talk to everyone in the team, because the way we sort of divide our leads are dependent on size. So we have a tier system. So dependent on, the size of lead, experience, i.e. a household name, a corporate, that would determine who the lead goes to. So it'd be good to, obviously, going back to Michael's point about getting contact lists about who looks after what building, what their role is, constantly updating that, having everyone's DDI. And I think my biggest frustration is not being able to get hold of, an operator when you want to book a viewing, because sometimes we're driven by our clients wanting to literally view the same day in a couple of hours from taking an inquiry. And it's always good to have, if that individual is not available, maybe another backstop, or if there's another form of communication, whether it's Slack or WhatsApp. And, there's operators I've got on my WhatsApp where I can just, I can't get hold of them. They might be on the phone, but guaranteed they'll WhatsApp me and say, "Great, Bob, I can do a viewing at this time. Sorry, I was on the phone." It's just having that rapport, I think, just helps tenfold.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the Flexible Space Association team have been big fans of WhatsApp over the last few months, when we've not always been in the same place. So, Michael, have you got any further thoughts on that? Perhaps also just to pick up a question that's just come in about MailChimp being used to send availability, because it often goes into people's junk folders. I don't know whether you find that as a problem or not.
Well, I think what we tend to we actually have a centralized email which is availability at flexsaoffices.com. So we've long since tried to move away from having an email address to 50 people, and instead people can go into a centralized folder and just search by a particular operator if they need availability. Actually, to be honest with you, the actual so MailChimp. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a case of which addresses you put into MailChimp to send it to. But for the most part, what tends to happen is, most brokerages work in an open plan environment. Whenever somebody wants to know what the availability is, as opposed to trawling through an inbox, they literally just shout up. Does anybody know if such and such has such and such? And generally speaking, somebody knows. So actually, it's a much faster process. It's a collaborative process internally. And I think if you can be part of that collaborative process by engaging with us proactively, not necessarily just to remember that I've got a 4-person office, but just to chat through the status of leads, keep talking about conversations. And again, I think I'm moving on to the next question. Sorry, but the more you speak to us, it's not necessarily about when to send us an email and how many emails to send us. It's how many people do you speak with on a day-to-day basis at brokerages, and how many of those people know you well.
And Sophie, is there anything that's different to Instant, or does that mirror your experiences in terms of those contacts?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different here at Instant, because I've got a team dedicated to just looking after operators and relationships. So every single operator has a dedicated account manager from my team, as well as the sales team. So we are there to be at anyone's point of contact at any stage, to give updates, give feedback, and try and help any issues that are there. I think, as both Michael and Bob have said, I think speaking to as many people as possible across all the different teams and the different leads, or the different guys who receive the leads, is important, because what you might do with one person might be very different with another. And for me, it's about building that trust and that relationship, that that you can work together and close deals no matter what size, no matter what location. So if you have the time, and you can definitely build rapport and relationship with as many members of the business as you can, because like both of the guys have said, we all have different experiences, we have different knowledge, and it's really good to make sure you get the best out of all of us.
Okay, thank you. That was hopefully some helpful advice to operators. So next question that had come in from somebody who was signing up for this. Inquiries can often have a long life cycle, and that can mean commission or other variables change by the time someone signs for Workspace. Would you recommend operators regularly check in with brokers to avoid any late surprises, or in an ideal world, should brokers be keeping them abreast of changes? And Michael, we'll start with you on that one, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jane. So I'm still a little bit confused as to what the exact question that's being asked here. So I'll try to answer two. The communication piece we've already covered, to a huge extent. So I'm not going to labour that point. But whatever the update is, whatever the variable change is, let us know. Let us know centrally, let us know proactively. The more people you speak to, the better. In terms of commission and other variables changing along the life cycle of an inquiry, I think this is maybe alluding to what happens if a customer goes over a particular offer period, and an enhanced commission doesn't apply anymore. Well, then it doesn't. It's I'd rather operators were quite firm with what they put on the table, as opposed to there being any ambiguity about that sort of thing. If an offer is on the table with a finite time time period, then when it runs out, it runs out. As long as you give us a countdown regularly of when it is due to expire, no one can say that they weren't aware of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, is there anything you'd add on that?
Yeah, I just think the same as what Michael was saying, but I do think it's a two-way thing. So I think that we're working in partnership with the operator to try and close the deal and win the business. So I think it needs to come from both sides. We need the communication from the operator as to if the variable is going to change, and vice versa. We need to be giving that information as soon as we have it. I do think that it comes down to that honesty and transparency as well. The more transparent an operator is about a change in a contract or a change in a fee structure, then the more likely it is that everyone will be amicable and applicable and work together really well to help that client move in and continue to be a tenant there. I think if we're not honest and transparent, that's where issues lie, and I think that we can definitely eliminate that by just speaking more and opening up that dialogue. Okay, and finally, Bob, anything you'd like to say on that?
Yeah, I think I have to agree on Sophie and Michael's points. I think what sometimes frustrates me is when you've got special offers that are basically given a timeline, and it's difficult to determine a timeline because sometimes the old sort of adage, give the clients a sense of urgency, and this offer runs out, in a week or two. It just, I think, rubs clients up the wrong way as well. So I think as long as the message is very clear, we all want to give clients a sense of urgency and like them to sign like yesterday. But the reality is you just have to understand and manage the client's expectation and the operator's expectation in terms of when a client is going to sign. And as long as you're on the same page and you've got that two-way dialogue, then there should be no ambiguity, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I think just also on that as well. Sorry, just on that as well, I think it's also, if there are going to be caveats, they've got to be very clear and very simple. But the more caveats you put into a special offer, whether it's for a client or a broker, the harder it is for anyone to stay on top of what it means. So in all honesty, if there is a special offer or there is a change in the contract and it changes a commission structure, whatever it may be, it's got to be very clear and simple. Otherwise, it gets overly complicated and it can become quite hard for both a broker or a client to understand what they're actually meant to be doing.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that's been helpful. The next question came in a variety of forms from different people, and it's also come in this afternoon from someone watching in one form. It's predicted that many companies will be looking for regional office centres or desk space for their staff. Are you seeing that prediction bearing out? And if so, how are brokers engaging with those centres ideally placed to accommodate these requests? And Sophie, we'll come back to you again on that one.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen a rise in regional and sort of outer London, outer skirts of city requirements. It hasn't all been due to COVID. Some of it has been due to some of the clean air programs and the congestion charges and things that have forced clients to come out of the city centre. But we have seen an increase in those types of spaces. Again, though, it's too early to say whether this is long term or whether this is just on a short term basis. But I think flexible working itself and the ability to work different hours, work from home, be able to sort of fit it in within your personal life has become really prominent. So we can definitely see that people are looking at how they move their products and how they move their locations and what it is that clients are interested in, has definitely moved people to consider not just city centre locations, but outskirts as well.
Okay, thank you. Bob, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen a sort of major trend. I have seen more inquiries for sort of Greater London, the periphery of London, so forth, but not in a massive way. I've seen sort of more health workers, small sort of 1-2 man bands wanting to sort of move on the outskirts of Zone 2, maybe sort of, places like Slough, Maidenhead, South East, Croydon, etc. But I don't think it's going to be I think it's not going to be an ongoing trend. I think it's just a short-term trend to cope with wanting to be in an office rather than going into maybe central London to your main office. So yeah, that may well change over time, but I think only time will tell. And we're in a pandemic and things are changing constantly. So yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, Michael, anything to add to that in this sort of fast changing world at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Yeah. So we've our lead flow, generally speaking, is actually in August is the first time since COVID hit that our total inquiry volume has grown year on year. But and that volume is driven by smaller regional inquiries. And by regional, I'm talking outside of core London and the major conurbations. So we have seen a noticeable uptick in that. The other thing, and I'm going to mention the unthinkable here, but this is specifically on organic traffic, not paid for traffic. Because we are sort of machines for generating paid traffic via Google, but that's something that you can influence one way or the other. Whereas organic traffic trends are a lot more steady and observable. So there does seem to be a shift towards regionalization, but it's certainly not yet evident in the sort of ground-shaking changes that people are forecasting. Hub and spoke will take over the world and all that sort of stuff. None of that is what we're seeing on the ground in huge numbers yet. I suspect there's a lot of lease expiry issues that will bring that to bear, later down the line. But for the moment, there is an increase in more regional traffic as far as we can see, but major conurbations are still lagging behind, primarily because of commuting issues.
Yeah, and on a related question, Bob, are there any areas you particularly identify as growth places? Looking for the longer term as well, I'm sure.
Just St John's Wood seems to be sort of very popular of late. Other growth areas, I think you've got sort of areas like the Gatwick Diamond, sort of Reigate, Gatwick. Also, you've got some huge multinationals there, pharmaceuticals, aerospace companies, big financial institutes. I think that will continue to evolve, I think, over time. And as companies start to sort of decentralize their central London operations, they'll probably have maybe a hub office in these locations. But we've got to remember a lot of these smaller businesses service some of these multinationals. So there seems to be a trend of more sort of smaller requirements for 2 to 4 desks in these sort of suburbs, and that sort of Gatwick Diamond, where there's something like 65,000 companies or so, small companies. Yeah.
Okay. And Michael, what's your thoughts on this growth areas in particular?
It's difficult. I don't want to give any finger in the air responses, so I didn't look into specific areas. I think it's a much broader point from me on this, is that there's obviously a shift towards remote working and home working being much more mainstream accepted. So that's point one. Point two is a greater sort of reshuffling of people's ability to, as people are able to work from pretty much anywhere, we're seeing a shift in residential sales patterns. So actually people are starting to live in different places. And I think what you're going to see is probably, those places that are currently understood as commuter belts into major conurbations are going to probably benefit from more localized usage of flex space if it's available. just to pluck one out of the air because I used to live there, places like Stevenage, for example. You know, if you went to Stevenage on a Tuesday morning, you'll be empty because everyone's in London. So actually, you know, and there's a lot of localized hubs there already, and I would imagine that they are seeing a much greater influx of interest from local residents that are choosing not to commute into London, but still need a you know, a flexi base to work from on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest shift in terms of how people utilize flexible workspace.
Okay, thank you. And we're just down the road from Stevenage here in Hatfield, so know that area well. Sophie, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think Greater London is definitely, as Bob alluded to, an area that is picking up anywhere within the M25. So again, not having to come into central London, but outside of London, again, I don't want to sort of put hand on heart and say these are the places to go, but I spoke to the team earlier and a lot of them were saying places like Greater Manchester, Solihull, Nottingham, Dudley, West Bromwich, all those kind of like areas which are sort of, you know, smaller cities and smaller towns are the ones that are definitely seeing a higher rate of leads coming in. But again, none of them are large corporate inquiries, but multiples of smaller inquiries sitting there. So we're definitely, I mean, there's hundreds more, by the way, towns and cities that we could probably talk about, but I think those are the ones that at the moment we're seeing a higher influx of leads than we normally would. And again, whether this is just short term or long term, it's still too early to say.
Okay. Thank you. And just looking at some of the other questions that have come in during the course of when we've been speaking, and one question that you might all have different views on potentially: how much benefit do your agents get out of visiting centres? Bob,
visiting a centre is the most fundamental thing for our business. It's, you know, you can touch, feel, understand the transport links. Actually, you know, I was out on a viewing this morning, and it's amazing how much more you discover, you know, when you just go down and have a look at the kitchen areas, the communal areas, you know, the WCs, even the showers. It's just amazing. It just gives you a really good idea of the actual space, the desk allocation, the density of the space, the actual desk, furniture that's used, things like the partitioning. You know, some people go to town on partitioning, some have very soft sort of Chinese walls, if you like. So it's so important attending viewings and understanding what an operator's space is like. It's one thing I encourage everybody to do as a broker, is just to go out there and really understand what you're selling. It's all very well talking to a client on a phone and just saying, right, this is a great building, this is what it looks like, and sending some wonderful pictures, but actually visiting and meeting the team there, understanding how service orientated they are, about understanding how they meet and greet clients. If you're offered a tea, coffee, it's that whole experience. I think it's just, you know, it's like being in a hotel, and you can tell literally, I think, the first 2 minutes when you walk into a hotel whether you're going to have a good experience or not. So that's a fundamental part of, especially my job.
okay. Michael, would you share those views or any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I won't dwell upon, you know, talking too much. Absolutely, yeah. You know, where possible, a first-hand experience by an agent on the ground is vital. So yes, the more of those, the better when we can.
Yeah, Sophie.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think it's hugely valuable, I think, but realistically, we won't be able to get out and see every single space. We are, at Instant, we're very fortunate. We've got a regional team out in the region who are there and very prior to COVID visiting a lot of centres on a frequent basis. But, you know, at the moment, between now and the times when we can travel more, I'd highly recommend operators, if we can't visit, to send as many videos and virtual tours as possible. That really helps us in the meantime, because, you know, a hand on heart will say that we will try and get to every single one, but we won't be able to ever get to every single centre in the UK. So we would, you know, it's hugely valuable, but there are some areas that it will be very difficult to get to. So videos, virtual tours, photographs, all of those things are really vital in the event that we can't visit.
Thank you. We posted on our website just this week an article from one of our members about virtual tours, and it's all very clever, and it was quite nice to be able to see around one of their business centres as well from our office. Another question that came in actually just before we started from someone who signed up today was, given the current economy, What advice would you give for a young but fast-growing serviced office business, and how best can we build strong relationships and maintain them with brokers? Sophie, to take that first.
So I think, it kind of alludes back to everything we've said today, but I think if you're a new provider, or you're growing rapidly, it's all around your brand, how you want to position yourself in the industry, and making sure that's communicated really well to all the brokers and the agents. I think it's the communication, and it's being as clear and transparent on everything that you're offering. And I think, for me, if you're easy as an operator to work with and you make the process simple, you will do more deals with brokers. The harder it is to work with you, the less communication we have, and the more complicated a sales process is, it becomes extremely challenging as a broker to get a large volume of deals over the line. So if you're growing and you want brokers to be a big part of your expansion plans, or as you're setting up, you see brokers being a part of that process, I would just say make it really easy to work with us. And I'm more than happy to talk anyone through how to make it easy. But it really is, for me, the best way to make sure that we can be successful together.
Thank you. Bob, what would be your words of wisdom on this?
Yeah, I think, pretty much what Sophie's covered. And I think the main thing is just, getting a team of our individuals to come and see your site, have a look at the centre, look at your USPs, understand your USPs, understand your infrastructure, be unique as well. Don't be like everyone else. I think Michael mentioned about differentiation, and that's really key in a crowded marketplace. Just, understanding your business model, what you want to achieve. If you want to talk to us about what the sort of market rates are and so forth, that's fine. But believe in your product and make sure you help us understand it, whether that's we obviously come out and come and visit us, and we'll help you and assist you in marketing your new space, however you see fit.
Thank you. Michael, anything you'd add to that?
Just also make use of the market itself. I've always smile when I think about how much support and help and sort of access is given to operators by other operators. To a degree, this is a very sort of an industry where a lot of people sort of move around for better or for worse. So, a huge number of people know each other, and a lot of the time they're quite happy to open doors. I remember 10 years ago the dreaded operator mystery shop was the standard play. Whereas these days, if you call up and say, "Look, I'm opening down the road. Can I pop in and have a look at the product that you've got and ask you a few questions?" For the most part, the answer is going to be, "Yeah, come on down." Why? Because your competitors are proud of what they do. They want you to see what they've got, because you're going to know about it anyway. Either because you've won a deal and beat them, or lost a deal and lost out to them. So I think make use of the marketplace, and make use of, obviously, the FlexSA has a great membership. Make use of that. But I won't add to anything else the other guys said. I wholeheartedly agree with everything.
Thank you. Yes, as an association, we were looking at the start of the year at the idea of facilitating visits between different operator members. Obviously, it hasn't been something that's been so possible this year, but I'm sure it will be something that we come back to in the future. So I think we've reached our final question now, which was a bit of a look ahead. What do you predict as the future of the office, and particularly flexible workspace, in a year's time? Hopefully, when we'll be vaccinated against COVID-19, what do you think the industry will look like? Michael, start with you on that one.
That's a big question. I think I'll summarize it in sort of three bullet points. One being good, one being bad, and one being an overall sort of viewpoint that you can agree with or not agree with. It's just my sort of personal take on where things are going to go. So in terms of the good, every upcoming lease expiry will have a browse. There is no doubt about it. The flexibility of contracts and the ability to enter into much shorter agreements has been the absolute priority for every single company that we've spoken to that's currently under a long-term agreement. So, as those leases start to expire, we will benefit from those incoming inquiries. There is no doubt about that. And that's going to be the case for major cities as well as regionals. So that's just a given. To sort of counterbalance that with the bad, I think every landlord with surplus space that has the capability of somehow converting it into something flexible, probably through a management agreement of some sort, will become extremely proactive in trying to secure that sort of deal and offer their space on more flexible terms in the absence of a greater degree of interest from their traditional client base. So I think whilst we will see an ever-growing increase in the levels of interest from customers, I also think that the market will become ultra competitive as the differences between conventional leasehold space as we understand it now and flex space as we understand it now start to blur and disappear. So I think that's going to be a challenge. But overall, I think there'll be a continued movement, and this has been happening for ages. But it's the shift towards commoditizing flexibility. We're already seeing products coming to the marketplace from operators that are saying, well, you can take a dedicated office for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. There's going to be a greater movement towards that sort of micro flexibility. I've often wondered, and this is a sort of something maybe to discuss on different conversations, but I've always wondered whether groups of localized operators would potentially partner together to take on larger operators with a national coverage to sort of give customers the ability to utilize regional buildings, regardless of whether they're with multiple actual groups, if that makes sense. Whatever happens, it'll be interesting. I think we'll be at the forefront of reinventing this whole meaning of work business, which I think we've been instrumental at. But I think there'll be good times and challenges.
Good. Yes. Hopefully positive. So, Sophie, what's your look ahead to the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, as Michael said, to predict because it's slightly unknown, and you could almost take yourself back to 2008 and try and compare it to the recession, which at the time, this market did relatively well in because people were downsizing and expanding and looking for flexible contracts. And I think that will be the same over the next couple of years. However, as much as it's been lovely working from home, it's not a long-term it's not a long-term commitment here. And I think that everyone is craving to get back into the office, having that social interaction, being in a collaborative environment. So I don't think the office is dead, as a lot of people have been talking about. I still definitely think it's there. I think that people will be looking for flexibility in line with flexible working. And I think, we may not see as many corporate headquarters in the big cities, but what we will see is a lot of regionalized offices. And I think also people looking at how they attract their talent pool, because in the past it always had to be your talent pool had to be in this central office and this is where it had to be. Well, the last 7 months we've all made working from home pretty successful. So I think people will reconsider, where they attract their talent from and do they have to be in the office for certain roles. And I think that will change people's mentality slightly. But I think, as much as we all enjoy having a bit of flexibility from working from home, doing the washing and doing what we need to do in between, a lot of us need to get back in that office and start working, better with people and sort of, throwing ideas off each other as best we can.
Thank you. And finally, Bob, I'm hoping you're going to leave us with a sort of positive note as well. This is the final question.
I'll try. But as my peers said, it's a difficult time at the moment, and we'll get through it because I'm a firm believer of stiff upper lip and just kind of get on with it. And I see the market evolving eventually. Obviously, we're going to go through a bit of pain for the next 6 months, as we all know. Let's not make any bones or hide that. But I think there's more smaller businesses. There's going to be more entrepreneurship, I think, coming to the fold, with unfortunately some people being made redundant. But that does sort of pave the way for more sort of startups, I think, because people, I'm sure, have been sitting on the fence with some great ideas, and now they'll probably put that into practice. Some people I speak to are getting sort of big redundancy packages, and they're quite entrepreneurial people. So I think they'll start utilizing service offices. Also, there's lots of hybrid of operators in the market. You can have semi-serviced, managed, fully serviced. There's just a plethora of different types of opportunities and space you can be in. There's, I think Sophie mentioned timeshare offices. ability to utilize an office for a month, for 3 days, 2 days. So I think the market will bounce back. It's just now I think it's about kind of covering your costs, and 6 to 8 months time, I think we'll generally start seeing an increase in the lead flow, and maybe smaller sort of footprint for multinationals and larger corporations, because some of them will continue to work from home. But going back to the collaborative piece, the best way to work together and share ideas, and those eureka moments are in an office with your colleagues, just having that banter, being able to go to the pub and to have a conversation. It just counts for so much more, and it'll bounce back. So I think everyone should look forward and just be positive, because it will bounce back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm certainly now in the office more than I'm at home, and it is nice to think that you're doing your work in the office and you're going home to home, and it's somewhere different, and that's the end of the working day. So I think over time there's some of the shine of working from home all the time will come off. So thank you very much to Michael from FlexSA Offices, Bob from Freedom, and Sophie from Instant Offices for participating. I hope that operators watching this have found this really beneficial to them, and we will put this webinar up on our YouTube channel within the next 24 hours or so. We are working at the moment on our programme of webinars going forward. We've got one that's nearly confirmed, and we will send that out in our newsletter to our members and post it more widely as well. So thank you very much to everyone for both watching, putting in your questions, and for participating today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Thank you.